This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyer Group.
Talk Radio 790. This is Workplace Lawyer, and I am Karl Gerber, and I still am glad to be Karl Gerber, for the time being, that is, at least. This show is going to be quite exciting because I am going to be bringing you some people that have not been on the air before. You're going to meet an actual top 5 in Los Angeles, is not Southern California, Mediator.
Check, 1, 2.
Steve Cerveris. Really, Steve Cerveris. I just felt like pronouncing it wrong. And you're going to meet Lorena Alamo, who was one of my clients who went through a 6-year legal odyssey on a pregnancy discrimination case in which the California Supreme Court made some comments twice. So this is sort of like a reunion between me and Lorena Alamo, the old client. And so I want to take this opportunity to ask her how old the baby is. It was the baby for the pregnancy discrimination case we had.
My daughter is 9 years old now.
How old was your daughter by the time our case ended, if you remember?
She was 6. She had just turned 6.
Wow. So where are you living now?
I live in Whittier, California.
Do they still do cruising there?
They sure do.
Ooh, Whittier Boulevard.
Sunday nights.
Now, I've got to tell you, I recently went Van Nuys Boulevard cruising, and it was a Saturday night, and that was quite exciting. And this has absolutely nothing to do with labor and employment law, but, you know, there may be some guys that are listening to this show and own a shop or something like that, or they just like to cruise. So if you guys want to call in, and I would strongly encourage that you do, the number is 800-ABC-KABC. Because we are interested in talking to employees in the state of California that may have a legal problem. Once again, 800-ABC-KABC. Please call in now. So, getting back to why we are here, we're going to talk about a case that went on a long time, and you're going to understand that most employment cases don't go on that long. Most of these cases are in and out in 6 months, maybe 2 years at the outside limit. But this case actually went to trial, and we won the trial, and then it suffered quite a few appeals, and so it went on a very long time. And I want just kind of for a minute, I want Miss Alamo, who is one of my old clients, as I said before, to go back and tell me a little bit about how it was to be in a lawsuit for as long as she was. Can you tell us anything about that? Because I think most people don't know what it's really like to be in an employment lawsuit.
Yes, it's very traumatizing. It's scary. You don't know what to expect. The other party usually tries to manipulate you to don't go to trial, don't listen to what the attorney is saying. We were right, you were wrong. You did something you were not supposed to. And throughout the time, you think about maybe it was you. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe there's a lot of possibilities that you think about, but you don't really understand that what they do to you and the way they treat you is not right.
Did your lawsuit involve a termination?
Yes, it did.
So how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like I wasn't worth anything. It made me feel like it was my baby's fault.
When was this that you had your case, and when were you fired?
I remember that I got pregnant in May of 2008, and I was going on leave in January. I think it was a week before. I did tell my employer that I was going to go on maternity leave, and they had only authorized me to go for about 6 weeks. I didn't know that we had an additional leave. I believe it's called bond with child.
Well, yes, Government Code Section 12945, for all of those listening who really care about those sections, you do get up to 16 weeks if you are a pregnant woman in the state of California. Now, if you're with an employer that has 50 or more employees and you've been there a year and you've worked 1,250 hours or more, you may have another 3 months tacked on. So there are some women that are able to be out of work for as much as 7 months if they're pregnant. So your case went to trial. I'm sure you remember that.
Of course.
I do. I was sitting next to you, and I think you were sick part of the time and coughing. It was a little bit annoying.
Yes, it was.
So how was it being represented by Karl Gerber, workplace lawyer?
It was fun. It was fun. Karl made me feel as I was important. My case mattered. And most of all, it was unfair. It was something unfair that I had to live with. I know there was a lot of what's the word I want to use? There was a lot of contradictions and on the other party, but Karl, you helped throughout the whole case, which was awesome.
Thank you for that, and I really appreciate you coming down here for the show. What I remember in the trial is your case involved, of course, a termination. They weren't going to let you come back after you had your baby, and there was some discrepancy about whether it was 3 hours into that day that you got fired or 20 minutes, but it was supposed to be that there was a lady that got into an argument with you, and that was supposed to have caused the termination. And this was supposed to have happened when you came in to show your daughter to your coworkers or something like that. But what I remember is the jury, the one thing they were really interested in is they heard that lady was going to come on the stand, and we were not able to get her deposition beforehand, which is a process where you ask witnesses questions. You find out what they're going to say. And we did not know what she was going to say. I was concerned, I'll be honest. And I remember the jury made a noise right when they heard it. And I'm like, woo, they knew that was the thing. They were really anxious to hear what she said. And then she didn't say that much. She didn't testify about a dramatic confrontation or argument, which was supposed to have been the reason for termination. So what happened in that case is I believe we had 3 days in court 1 week and then 3 days in court the next week. Sometimes judges do that. You don't get to come in consecutively because they have other business to do. And so I recall that we got our jury. We were there for 3 days. Then we did our closing argument, and the jury was deliberating, and they come back. And by the way, we tried to mediate this case, and this is why Steve Cerveris is here. He is a very well-known mediator in employment law. If you have an employment case in Southern California and your lawyer hasn't used him, plaintiff or defense, either side, I don't know what kind of a lawyer that would be. He's really one of the ones that have been doing this for a long time. But he didn't mediate Lorena's case. We used a retired judge initially, and it didn't settle. And so we tried the case, and we go through it, and we get this really strange verdict, which I will say is my lowest verdict ever, and Lorena is here, even notwithstanding that. It was a $10,000 verdict. And so I thought we lost the case because the old adage is the longer the jury deliberates, the longer they're thinking about what's supposed to happen, what result they're going to give, the more likely it is that you win. And the jury came back quickly, and they came back with a $10,000 verdict. And I recall the defense lawyer said, "Congratulations, I guess." And the jury ran out, okay? So you got to have 9 jurors on your side to win a case if it's a civil case in California in state court. We had 10. So this wasn't a jury that wasn't sure what to do. We had 10 people on board, not 9, but they ran out. You can talk to the jury. In the last episode of Karl Gerber, Workplace Lawyer, we talked about some other pregnancy trials I did, and I told you about what the jury said, and that's because you get an opportunity to talk to them afterwards. And if they're into the case, they will stick around. This one, they ran out. And there are 2 cases I've had with low verdicts. It was Miss Alamo's case and another one in Redondo Beach, and both times the jury ran out, and we couldn't talk to them. So I figure, okay, big deal. We've got this $10,000 verdict. Now we're going to make a motion for attorney fees because it's a fair employment and housing case. We won the case for pregnancy, and so the other side has to pay my attorney fees. So we went and we made the motion, and at the time there was a case against the city of LA that was a big problem, and everyone thought, oh, you can't get attorney fees if you get a small verdict. But we got attorney fees. Anyways, the judge gave them to us, and it wasn't a lot of money. I think this verdict was something like $76,000 with costs of the trial. And so it's the last day the defendant can appeal, and they appealed a $10,000 verdict in which the attorney fees were nothing to write home about. I'm somewhat embarrassed to even talk about this now, but I am, because this is Workplace Lawyer, and we're here to talk about weird things that happen in the workplace. That's what we're doing. So we get this verdict, there's an appeal, and an appeal means that you're going to go to the Court of Appeal. You're going to have your verdict challenged. There's going to be different judges, a larger group of judges that can overturn the case. And I remember thinking, do I really want to appeal this case? Because, you know, if I don't file anything and they get a new trial, maybe that's better for my client. Maybe she'll get more the second time. So I wrote, this was 2011 by now. The trial was in December of 2010, and the appeal is going to get done. And I wrote this brief that was about 50 pages, and I do a lot of writing. I've done fiction writing. I got into this career doing some really great briefs, and this was one of my best briefs ever. But I've got to tell you, I started going crazy writing this because it was so long, and I remember thinking, oh, there's a mistake on page 40 and I still have 10 more pages, and it was just not fun writing this brief. It really wasn't a great thing to be doing, and I wrote it, and when we come back, we're going to break in a minute. I'm going to tell you more about the appeal. You're going to hear more about what it's like going through a lawsuit for 6 years. But I would encourage you again, if you want to talk about employment law, you want to talk about pregnancy, give us a call at the station now. We have the operator standing by. It's ABC, KABC. It's a 1-800 number. So I hope to hear from you tonight. And when we come back, we'll continue talking to you about a very long-running pregnancy case.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-501-3689 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-501-3689 for your free author submission kit. Again, 800-501-3689.
Darren College, a former NFL Super Bowl champion, signed the most important contract of his life to serve in the Army National Guard.
I've had a lot of military in my family. It's a big part of what my family's done for a long time. I want to go out there and make a difference. I didn't find that working behind a desk, so for me it was a pretty easy decision to make. And then the opportunity to serve my community and serve my country was just icing on the cake.
To learn how to be part of the Army National Guard, log on to nationalguard.com. Sponsored by the California Army National Guard. Aired by the California Broadcasters Association and this station.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit beefy, or even with type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Affordable term life insurance is out there. Call Term Provider and speak with Big Lou at 800-481-1458. 800-481-1458 or visit biglou.com. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-501-3689 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-501-3689 for your free author submission kit. Again, 800-501-3689.
Since 1993, the Employment Lawyers Group has been a consistent force in fighting for the rights of California employees. They've represented thousands of employees in cases in which they've lost their jobs, been sexually harassed, discriminated against at work, or owed wages individually or as a group such as a class action. The Employment Lawyers Group has maintained a high win rate and a serious record before the California courts. Please call 877-525 877-525-0700 for an experienced work lawyer. That's 877-525-0700. They have call takers standing by. Online, research the firm at worklawyerca.com. They have offices throughout Southern California. If you hire the Employment Lawyers Group, your legal problem becomes theirs to solve.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. I'm Karl Gerber. Be glad you're not. You're listening to Karl Gerber, Workplace Lawyer. Before we broke, we were talking about a 6-year saga with Miss Lorena Alamo, who was a client of mine, who is in station tonight. And I was telling you about how we got a $10,000 verdict on a pregnancy discrimination case, and the defendant appealed this. And I also want to mention one other thing. Closing argument is when the lawyers get to sum up what's being the point of these cases and argue things. And so we had closing argument, of course, on the Alamo versus PMIC case. And what I remember, for those of you cruisers, and I don't mean people looking for guys, but cruisers like Van Nuys Boulevard and Whittier Boulevard, I had at that time a Dodge Challenger, and it was a 2009, and that car gets hot. And driving the court stop and go traffic the last day of the trial, I remember it was raining and I was on some kind of attraction mode, and the car got so hot it shut off about a mile away from where I had to park to go to court right before closing argument. And somehow I literally put it in the neutral, coasted in to get to this closing argument where we end up with a $10,000 verdict. And I was wrong before. After the attorney fees, it was $71,472.87. So defendant files an appeal, and the lawyer on the other side said that the law is changing and the judge got something wrong in a jury instruction because pregnancy was supposed to be a substantial motivating factor in this job termination. And unfortunately, the way the jury instruction was, it said substantial motivating reason. So instead of the word factor, the jury was read a jury instruction with the word reason, and I end up having an appeal on this that I go crazy on, and it's about 50 pages. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever. So let's see what happens. We're going to win this, hopefully. And if we don't, the worst thing that could happen is not the worst thing, because the case gets retried and we'll probably get a better verdict the second time. So we go through the appeal, and the Court of Appeal, of course, affirms what happened. And so we still have our verdict in this case, a little low verdict. And I'm thinking, oh, great, maybe this is really going to be over with. But that's not what happened. What happened is a lot of people who are in various organizations for employers wrote letters to the Court of Appeals urging them to publish this case. If the case is published in the law books, it's much more likely to get picked up by the California Supreme Court for the California Supreme Court to determine if the trial court got it right and if the Court of Appeal gets it right. So, I don't know. So many letters come in. It gets the attention of the California Supreme Court. At this time, in the trial, remember, December of 2010. Now we're in 2012, and there's a case called Harris versus the City of Santa Monica, which is supposed to be this big deal and hasn't been decided by the California Supreme Court. But I write this brief, and I said a couple of things in the brief, and it was a lot about a song. And it was one of these songs by Diana Ross, and I think the first question I said to the defendant in this brief and the court is, do you know where you are going to? Because if your appeal wins, you're going to get a retrial, and you're probably not going to have the $10,000 verdict, so why in the world are you doing this? And then the second question was, do you like the things that life are showing? Because life might be showing you on your second trial, you don't get a $10,000 verdict, so why are you appealing this? And then we get this appeal. It comes out, not won by the defendant, as I mentioned. The California Supreme Court hears about this case because there are a whole bunch of letters written, and we're talking about a case that I had the craziest case I had, one that went on for 6 years. Lorena Alamo, whose name appears in law books, is in the studio. Never before, to my knowledge, has there been an employment client that ended up having her name in the law books, who's on live radio. She's also here with a top 5 mediator in California, Steve Cerveris. And he's going to talk about how crazy this situation sounds and why mediation is so important, because sometimes it is better to try to resolve these things. So what happens is, in my case, Alamo versus PMIC, which you can read about, we had the appellate court ruling September 24th, 2012 on a trial that happened December of 2010. The Supreme Court grants review, something I thought was never going to happen, January 21st, 2013. Miss Alamo's baby at this point is not in nursery school anymore, probably. And you can read about the grant at 300p 3D 898. That's a law book. And you find out that the California appellate court has to rewrite the opinion because of one word in one jury instruction. And when you do an employment case, you bring a case based upon a bunch of different theories, not just one word in one jury instruction. So we had a pregnancy discrimination case, FIA violations. We had wrongful termination. If you fire someone because they're pregnant, you don't let them come back to work because they're pregnant, that's also wrongful termination. So we had more than one theory, and this one word and one jury instruction was only valid for one of the theories. But we find out that we have to retry the case. The second time the California Supreme Court writes about this case, the second time the appellate court wrote about the case, they decide it has to be retried for one word, for one jury instruction, because the California Supreme Court told them so. So this is just crazy. Finally, the case is going to get back to the trial court level. It's remanded for a trial, and that's in 2013. Trial December 2010, usually a case for employment law is in that court. 6 months, 2 years. A lot of these cases settle, and they settle in the 6 month to 1 year time frame after you've had an opportunity to take depositions, start proving what the case is going to be about. And a lot of times they settle with mediation. And to be honest with you, I think really almost always they settle with mediation. Mediation is just a really important thing when we're talking about employment law. For some reason, and this is something that our guest, Steve Cerveris, is going to talk more about. And again, this is Workplace Lawyer. We're listening to Talk Radio 790 KABC. We have 2 guests in studio. You've been hearing from me a lot lately, but pretty soon you're going to hear from the guests again also. And so at any rate, we're finding out years after the original trial of this case that it's going to be retried for one word and one jury instruction. And so, guess what? The judge gets challenged. Someone decides they don't like the new judge because the judge that tried the case retired. This was going on so long. So we get the judge challenged. We're waiting around for a trial. Now, I will tell you, and we can't tell you more than this, the case finally was over with in 2015, and it wasn't retried. So this is the craziest, longest single plaintiff case I've ever been involved in. Like most of my cases are over with, as I told you, 6 months to 2 years. If it's 2 years, it's because it's going to be a trial. It's because the court probably couldn't take the case the first time it was set for trial. So that is Alamo versus PMIC. You can read about it in the law books, and Miss Alamo came down. Now I'm going to tell you about Steve Cerveris. Steve Cerveris is someone I've known as a mediator since 1999, I would say. And I've had a number of mediations with him, and he does mostly, he'll tell you in a moment, but I think mostly, if not all, employment cases. He has a reputation of being very fair to both sides. If you're recommending to the other side who's a good mediator to help us resolve this case so that we're not in a 6-year legal battle, a lot of times the other side will agree to Steve Cerveris because he's done a lot of mediations with the defense firms also. He's not one-sided. He's very fair, too fair. He has this nice traditional office in Burbank, and he used to have a very small office with a very small, improbably sized room, not too much like the one we talked about last show. Nothing like that happened, but he has a very nice building, and he only does mediations there, and it's the sort of place where someone can go and feel comfortable if they have a lawsuit, and it's a very emotional thing for them. Mr. Cerveris is also a professor, adjunct professor in mediation, and he had a career as a public defender before he got into mediation, so he understands what trials are. He's a California top neutral. That's a rating by a lawyer magazine. He also is one of the 7 California super lawyers, as a mediator, best lawyers in America. He has an AV rating from Martindale Hubbell. He's a diplomat of the California Academy of Distinguished Neutrals, distinguished fellow of the International Academy of Mediators, and that's almost, more things than I have. I'm only licensed in 4 states, and he's members of more organizations for mediators than just about anyone. So it really is an honor to have Mr. Cerveris on air tonight, and I'd like him to briefly introduce himself very quickly before we break in a minute.
Well, Karl, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I thought this would be interesting because I've never been on live radio before, and given what I do as a mediator, everything I do is confidential, so there's really nothing I can get into in terms of specifics, because one of the safe spaces that you talked about in mediation involves the fact that everything we do is confidential.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break and do something about that. That's not going to work if there aren't going to be specifics. Our listeners want to hear the nitty-gritty, so I don't know about that. We're going to have to see. I'm going to have to prod you for something that works. So again, stay tuned to hear more from a top mediator who doesn't want to get into any specifics.
Boss, there's a photographer out here who wants to do a piece on Jimmy John's for her magazine.
What kind of piece?
Well, she heard about a clothing optional delivery policy and,
Did you tell her the naked driver incident was a momentary misunderstanding?
Yes, sir, but...
Did you tell her it's our meats that are going all natural, not our drivers?
Yes, sir, that's not...
Did you tell her Jimmy John's is committed to serving sandwiches with only the finest all-natural ham, roast beef, salami, bacon, and real fresh turkey breasts?
Yes, sir, I did, sir.
So she wants to photograph our sandwiches?
No, sir. Actually, she wants to do a calendar.
A what?
A calendar. You know, the men of Jimmy John's.
Dibs on January.
Hi, I'm Christian von Rickenbach, founder of Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep changed the way America sleeps with our custom-built mattresses. We've taken customized sleep to the next level with the Helix Pillow. Our all-new pillows are fully adjustable, so you can achieve perfect comfort regardless of sleep position or body type. We have thousands of 5-star reviews, plus you get 100 nights to try us out. Get up to $125 off your mattress order when you go to helixsleep.com/talkradio. That's helixsleep.com/talkradio.
Do you love to play free poker? Do you love animals? 790 KABC has teamed up with MyGameRoom.com and GreaterGood.org to offer you free poker online and a great way to rescue pets. Just go to KABC.com, click the poker tab, and register with your email. Play free poker online, give back while you play, and listen to 790 KABC. Play free poker now on KABC.com. Just click the poker tab, register an email, and help rescue pets. Brought to you by MyGameRoom.com and GreaterGood.org.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit beefy, or even with type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Affordable term life insurance is out there. Call Term Provider and speak with Big Lou at 800-481-1458. 800-481-1458 or visit biglou.com. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
Talk Radio 790, KABC News Update. I'm Steve Cumming. Citing 2 senior White House officials, Politico is reporting Navy Rear Admiral Ronnie Jackson will not return to his role as President Trump's personal physician after he withdrew his nomination for Veterans Affairs Secretary following numerous allegations of improper behavior. Jackson will be permanently replaced by Sean Conley, a Navy officer who had filled in for Jackson last month. The 45th Annual Daytime Emmy Awards are currently being handed out at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. General Hospital had entered this year's competition with the most nominations of any soap at 26. Days of Our Lives and The Young and the Restless each started out with 25, while The Bold and the Beautiful had 18. KABC SoCal weather, mostly clear this evening in areas of low clouds overnight and in the morning with lows in the lower to mid-50s. Tomorrow, partly cloudy with highs in the 60s to around 70. More news coming up and continuous coverage on KABC.com. I'm Steve Cumming, Talk Radio 790, KABC News.
Since 1993, the Employment Lawyers Group has been a results-oriented law firm whose goal is to get the client what they deserve. They've represented thousands of California employees who've lost their jobs, been sexually harassed, subjected to employment discrimination, or were owed wages on an individualized or group basis, such as a class action. They have a rate of success. There are few situations involving employment law that they have not confronted. At the forefront of employee rights, they're often the first employee law firm to confront a new legal issue. For an experienced employment lawyer, call 877-525-0700. That's 877-525-0700. They have call takers standing by. Online, read more about the firm at employeelawca.com. They have offices throughout Southern California. Make your work problem theirs to solve.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. I'm Karl Gerber. This is Karl Gerber, workplace lawyer. We have a brave man who called 1-800-222-5222 to come on air. He's going to be the first person we've spoken to on this show live. But remember, I've taken over 110,000 new client calls. So hopefully this is going to be a good experience for our caller. Are you there, sir?
I'm here, Karl. How are you?
I'm just doing dandy. I'm going to refer to you as Mr. French, if that's okay.
Mr. French, that'd be great.
Okay, because as you know, we're talking live on air. There's no confidentiality. There's no attorney-client privilege. And all three of our listeners could be hearing this right now.
Well, we wouldn't want to give up any privileged information, that's for sure.
All right. So I understand you are actually an employee in the state of California, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And somebody is making a false allegation against you.
Not yet, but I think there's a possibility that might happen shortly.
How do you know there's going to be this false allegation?
I mean, there's just, been talk. I mean, I don't think...
Okay.
There's nothing to it in my mind, but the
I'm
environment
is concerned about this. This is for real. This isn't imagined.
Well, the environment's turning pretty negative right now, and being in the media business, I think that the concern is heightened. If I was in the septic tank business, I don't think I'd be concerned, but
I'd be concerned if you were in the septic tank business. That's a pretty messy business, and a lot of things can happen. So what exactly is this allegation that happens to be false, that might surface but hasn't surfaced yet, but you're reaching out to a lawyer on air to talk about?
Well, I think that maybe, first of all, how long ago, how much time will have had to have passed for me? First of all, I don't think it would be probably in the criminal realm. I'm more concerned about, and I think we have insurance for that.
I think we need to get this on the table. What is this false allegation?
Well, I mean, just, somebody's going to possibly accuse me of maybe doing something inappropriate in terms of like maybe a touch or something like that. But
more again, like, sexual harassment.
Yeah, I mean,
but not really
like
sexual
that.
harassment. Because remember, we're trying to get a harasser to call up and talk to us about what goes on in the mind of a sexual harasser. But you think you're going to be accused of this, but you, of course, didn't do this.
No, I think that it was like there was a story in the media recently where somebody comforted. This was a higher profile person.
Oh, yeah, I think we all read about that. So did you comfort somebody? Did you give them comfort food?
It was something like that where maybe the touch of a shoulder kind of thing.
Matzo ball soup?
Yeah, I mean, more like touching a shoulder, but it wasn't.
Well, okay, so you touch someone's shoulder to comfort them, and at that moment, what was going on that they needed to be comforted for?
It was like a death in the family kind of thing, something like that.
All right, well, in all seriousness, this workplace has become problematic. And
yes.
I represent employees, but I have to be the first to say if people can't comfort people, if there's been a death in the family, this is not going in the right direction. Now, with sexual harassment, it does need to be severe and pervasive. So pervasive means it's happened more than once. And the victim also does need to indicate it was unwelcome. So unless this victim had told you this was unwelcome, I don't know how you would know this was unwelcome.
No, I didn't feel that way. I mean, I at the time it seemed like, and again, it wasn't a bear hug or a warm embrace. It was more just like hey, I'm really sorry about your loss, kind of on the back of the shoulder area. But it wasn't like we were chest to chest like that, not even close.
What was she wearing?
I'd be just, a regular workplace, kind of a business suit type of an outfit, just something that you would see every day, nothing revealing or anything like that.
Well, let's hope that this does not develop into something, because it doesn't sound like it would be qualifying as sexual harassment, but there is something called assault and battery. And if somebody touches someone without their consent, it is battery. Now, again, there needs to be an understanding that this is going to be offensive. And if you're comforting somebody, just tapping their shoulder, because there's a death in the family, that does not sound like an offensive touch. And it is unfortunate that the workplace has come this way. I'm not a very nice person. You can ask people about that. I don't hug people. I don't even kiss my wife. We just don't do that anymore. But I don't ever touch my employees, and I don't even want to get close to them because I don't know if they like me from one day to the next. But
is that where we're at? An arm's length away at all times.
That really
leave the door open. Don't go alone anywhere with anyone ever, kind of thing.
That really has become the workplace in 2018, and people really just should not be touching each other at work. It's best just to sort of sit there and say, I hope everything is okay. I hope things get better. And I hope that this doesn't turn into a problem for you at work. I don't know what people have already accused you of being more to the story or something, but let's hope this one goes away. This doesn't sound like sexual harassment. It doesn't sound like anything. It sounds like you were genuinely concerned about somebody that had a death and you touched their shoulder. So we're on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. We're talking to the first live caller on this show, but we do need to get back to our show, which is about how sometimes these employment cases in court go on a really long time, and we were about to tell you more about Steve Cerveris. So I appreciate you calling up, Mr. French, and I hope it gets better. Thanks again for calling.
Thanks a lot, Karl. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if anyone would like to talk off the air confidentially, I would like to do that. 877-525-0700. That's my office. 877-525-0700. I have offices throughout Southern California. And again, 877-525-0700. And that's going to be a confidential conversation, because when you're on the air, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with you like I just did with Mr. French, because this is an entertaining show. Hopefully our listeners are going to learn a little bit. We learned that sexual harassment has to be severe. It has to be pervasive. The victim has to make it known in some shape or form that the touch is not consented to, that it's offensive. And touching someone's shoulder wearing a business suit when they're talking about somebody's with a medical problem or a death in the family doesn't sound offensive. But I will tell you, I have had cases where the harasser has used that vulnerability of the woman to touch them. And that's how sexual harassment I've seen start in some cases. So as I told the caller, it is best just not to be touching anyone anymore in the workplace and to keep a hand's distance, because in this day and age, you don't know. And not everyone likes to be touched at work, and you don't want to necessarily mix that. So we're going to talk more about employment law and the fact that most of these cases have to have a mediator on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show here on Talk Radio 790 KABC. But we do encourage people to call in at 800-222-5222 at the station here at KABC. That's 800-222-5222. Again, 800-222-5222, because the real interest in a show like this is to hear about events in the workplace that other people maybe haven't heard about. I've taken 110,000 of these kind of calls. I've got that many, if not more, emails. So I've heard about a lot of scenarios. So I would encourage you to call in if you'd like to. When we come back, we really are going to talk to a top 5 mediator who's live with me in studio. All right? So again, stay tuned for Steve Cerveris, top 5 employment mediator, who's going to explain to you why mediation is so important in the state of California for employment cases. Most of them just don't settle without mediation. And you don't want to be in a 6-year case like Lorena, Alamo versus PMIC. So, we're going to break in a minute, and before we do, I wanted to encourage people to call my office at 877-525-0700 if they want to have a confidential conversation. Again, 877-525-0700. Tomorrow will be best. I don't know if the workers that don't like me very much are standing by tonight. They will be next week. You better believe that.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks. It's the Ace Buy One, Get One Free sale. Don't miss great Buy One, Get One Free deals throughout the store. So many BOGOs, we can't name them all. Start the season right with savings on quality products from Scott's, Roundup, Ortho, and more. There are so many BOGOs and so many ways to save. Hurry in. The Ace Buy One, Get One Free sale ends Monday. Offers valid at participating stores. Buy select item and get designated item free. See store for details.
I met someone. You hear it a lot from people on Match, because more people have met their someone on Match than any other dating app. Everyone wants to find that meaningful connection, and Match is not only #1 in first, but second dates too. Now here's a free offer for our listeners. Go to Match.com/view for 7 days free. That's 7 days completely free to search, view photos, and connect. This free offer is found at Match.com/view. That's Match.com/view. Match.com/view.
Message and data rates may apply.
Guys, this may be the last time you ever have to think about hair loss, because Bosley is the real deal. They're giving men their hair back permanently. Their real hair. All it takes to get started on the hair gain train is a text message. You'll get an absolutely free information kit and a free gift card when you text FINAL to 85850. Bosley is America's #1 hair restoration expert, trusted by people all over the country and founded right here in L.A. Check them out now in Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, Westlake Village, or Ontario, and let Bosley show you for free how great your hair could look. Bosley uses the latest technology, and their solution is permanent. You're going to love what they'll do for your hair. So drop what you're doing long enough to send a text. Get your free information kit and gift card for $250 off by texting FINAL to 85850. Don't forget, that's FINAL to 85850.
The Employment Lawyers Group is a results-driven law firm whose goal is to get the right result for the client. They have represented employees with a high rate of success since 1993 throughout the state of California. They're only paid and if they are able to collect money from the employer, so there's not any upfront fees or costs in order to hire them. They have represented thousands of employees who've been terminated from their jobs, sexually harassed, subjected to employment discrimination, or are owed wages in an individualized or group basis such as a class action. Call 877-525-0700. That's 877-525-0700. They have operators standing by. They can also be reached at employeelawca.com. They have offices throughout Southern California. Hire them and make your workplace problem theirs to solve.
We are back for Karl Gerber, Workplace Lawyer. We are still Talk Radio 790 KABC, and we've had Steve Cerveris, who I got to come down here all the way from Burbank, so I've got to let him talk. He's a top 5 mediator in California, one of the best, fair to both sides, sitting here. And I'm going to ask him some questions now. Now, I got to paint a little bit of picture. I've had clients say he looks like Mr. Rogers, but I do not agree. I don't see the resemblance. He does not wear sweaters. I've never seen him wear a sweater. He always wears a suit, but he's just a normal-looking guy, which I think is good when you are trying to mediate an employment case and you have a lot of difficult personalities. You want someone that's even-tempered and not just crazy like me, because I don't know, that can offend a lot of people. But there are some mediators out there that offend people, and it works well. So I've been to Mr. Cerveris' office many times in Burbank. It's a very nice traditional building that he has for mediation with a Zen garden and all those kind of things that you'd have in the Mediator. But when I'm in that office, I always hear music playing, and it's always the Eagles and Gypsy Kings. So I've got to ask Steve Cerveris here, what is your favorite band? Is it the Eagles?
I'm a big Eagles fan, but I'm a product of the 60s and 70s, and I like good old-fashioned rock and roll. I'm a contemporary jazz fan. Anything that keeps the background in our office and keeps people awake and alert, that's what we look for.
All right, back to life in the fast lane here. So how long have you been a mediator?
I've been doing this for, well, first let me just say I'm a recovered litigator. I used to do what you did, first half of my career, about 15, 16 years worth. And then I decided I wanted to be in the middle as a mediator. And I've been doing this for, probably 20 years. I've been practicing for over 30 years now. So I've become one of the old ones.
20 years a mediator. And in my opinion, mediation is kind of like being an actor. Everyone wants to be a mediator. Most people can't do it. And they're probably in California 10 mediators for employment cases that I would use. And I'm not so far off from the defense bar and the other people that represent employees. And Mr. Cerveris is one of those people. Now, I say top 5 for the people that have a single plaintiff case. If you have a class action, there's some different mediators that do that. But Steve Cerveris really is on that list for a really great mediator. And he has been doing it a long time. A lot of people tried to get into the business afterwards. And for some reason, and I don't know why, these cases don't settle without a mediator. So another question I have for Steve Cerveris is, how many mediations have you done?
I would say probably in my 20 years, between 2,000 and 3,000 cases.
How many of these are employment cases?
Well, in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, my employment mediation practice has just gone through the roof. I used to have a much more eclectic practice. I did wrongful death matters, real estate matters, entertainment matters, business disputes, clergy abuse cases. I've done just about everything, but employment cases specifically have become all the rage, and that's what I spend most of my time doing now.
Now, mediations of employment law cases are very drawn-out events. They are not something that are likely to be over with in an hour or two. I had one case at Mr. Cerveris' office a couple years back. It was a sexual harassment case, and I was there till 3 in the morning or so, and that's my record for mediation. It started at 9 or 10, and it went till 3 in the morning. When mediation got big for employment law cases about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the mediation seemed to be really long. They were all like that, 12 hours, something like that. But now they're a little bit shorter, and that's good. But sometimes still, they don't end by 5 or 6 o'clock. So if Mr. Cerveris' wife is listening, I just want her to know that he is mediating. He's not doing something else. And mediators also have to do a lot of follow-up because sometimes the cases don't settle at the mediation. So if you're doing mediation, Mr. Cerveris, are you doing this 5 days a week?
I used to, but not any longer. I don't think it's great to be doing this more than 3 or 4 days a week. It's, as you said, I spend 10, 12, 15-hour days. I'm spending hours preparing for the cases beforehand. And so I try to keep it less than 5 days a week. I think I'm fresher that way.
I imagine you get briefs for these cases, and they're not brief, are they?
Rarely. Yours especially. I've had some doozies, and sometimes it can take hours just preparing for these mediations.
Are any of my briefs for mediation memorable?
I guess we're on the radio, so I can talk about your cases specifically. Yeah, you gave me one, and it was at a time that I didn't realize you were also doing fiction writing, because I read this brief, and it literally read like a Raymond Chandler novel. It was all with dialogue, and you were setting the scenes. It was like reading a screenplay. At first, I didn't know how effective it would be, but by the end, you told a great story. And that's what mediation briefs are supposed to do. You want to tell a story that catches people, catches their attention, especially the mediator, and you want to keep that driving throughout the mediation process. And I use those stories when I then get into my discussions, my private and group discussions with the people I'm mediating with.
How long does it take you to learn one of these cases well enough to be able to mediate it?
Well, again, because I do so much of the employment cases now, and this is an ever-changing area of the law, but I have a pretty good sense. I deal with the same types of cases that you've mentioned tonight, a lot of sexual harassment, wrongful termination, discrimination of every kind. And so, for the most part, most mediators that do this a lot are pretty up to speed. So the legal issues are not as great a challenge unless it's something really unusual or nuanced.
To me, as a lawyer, it seems that if you have to learn a case even 3 times a week, that's not easy because you get these briefs and you have to read them and they're very boring. And that's why I try to make my mediation briefs more interesting. And the same with my trials. If you have a boring story, no one wants to listen. They tune out. It's got to be exciting all the time. And so as a mediator, I'm just wondering, is it hard to learn all these cases?
Well, like I said, from a legal standpoint, I usually feel very comfortable in these areas because I deal with them all the time. But as you mentioned, if I'm doing 3, 4, or occasionally 5 mediations a week, I have got so many names. I've got so many people that I'm dealing with in my own mind. And sometimes you can conflate one witness from one case to another. And so you have to be very careful. I read my briefs. I prepare in great detail for each mediation. And I read everything on an iPad. I highlight. I take notes. And so I go back when I'm meeting with the people. I'll look at my notes that morning to make sure I'm up to speed.
So you did not mediate Lorena Alamo's case the first time or the second time, and you've heard a little bit about it tonight. Is this the textbook example of why mediation is so important?
This is why I became a mediator. I just got fed up as a trial attorney, thought there was a better way. And this evening before the show, I had a chance to meet Lorena for the first time, and my first question for her was, how are you doing? You know, how have you recovered from this 6-year battle? And I was not surprised to hear that she's still recovering.
Miss Alamo is still in the studio, and we're still talking to Karl Gerber, workplace lawyer, and with Steve Cerveris, a mediator, and Lorena Alamo. Miss Alamo, could you just briefly tell us, it's been years since your trial. It's been almost 8 years. Do you still think about this now?
I think about it every day.
Why?
It's something that you just can't get over. It's something that you had to live with for 6 long years. It's something that it'll never go away. You always doubt yourself. You never understand the why it happened to you.
Miss Alamo's case involved a job termination. The company didn't let her come back after a maternity leave. So I think that she's telling us a little bit about how at her new job, and you do have a new job, right?
Yes, I've been there for almost 10 years now.
I understand it's a better job.
Of course, yes.
So you actually moved beyond being a litigant in a case that got published several times in the law books.
Yes.
And that's good. That's what I want to hear. Because you don't want to be in litigation. And I think that maybe Mr. Cerveris could briefly tell us some of the benefits of mediation of an employment case.
Well, listening to what Lorena's been through for these last 6 years, I think gives you the best indication. Typically, I can get a case resolved in an 8 to 10 hour day. I try to sell the plaintiffs on getting closure and moving past, and something that Lorena's still struggling with. And I think that's in part because she spent so much time in front of judges and juries and dealing with appellate issues. In mediation, it's part psychology, part law. I was going to become a clinical psychologist in a previous lifetime until one of my professors said I would spend the rest of my life surrounded by depressed people. Instead, I became a mediator. Now I'm surrounded by angry, depressed people who are suing each other. But I still find it is beneficial to sit down and try to get through these disputes, let people know that they can gain closure, and move on, hopefully quicker than Lorena was able to through the mediation process.
Steve Cerveris, again, a top 5 mediator for employment cases in Southern California. Do you have an opinion as to why it is that most employment cases only settle if there's a mediator, and sometimes they only settle after there's been a trial if there's been a mediator?
Well, I think these are highly emotionally driven cases. Sometimes the emotion comes not just between the clients, in this case an employee and an employer, but oftentimes between the lawyers themselves as advocates. I was there. I did it. And so I know how that can be. And so mediation involves, again, a safe space. It's a confidential communication. And hopefully good mediators know how to deal with the clients that they're dealing with the lawyers that they're dealing with, and do so in a way that you have to be patient. It's not easy, but you have to be patient. You have to give people a place that they can speak. You want to be able to be a very good listener.
Mediation can be a magical thing. You're in a case, you're fighting the other lawyer, you're just going crazy. There are rulings by judges, you don't like something a judge did, and the mediator in 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours, other times, brings this whole thing closed. And it's over with, and that is the win-win-win, is to have an employment case and get a result that both sides are relatively happy with, rather than going to court, so that you can have your trial, have your appeal, have one word and one jury instruction that makes the case get retried. That it's not a perfect legal system we have. And I have done 48 trials that I first chaired and arbitrations. And I've won 46 of them. And there are other cases I haven't first chaired. So I'm someone that actually has spent a lot of time trying these cases. But I'm one of the first to admit that mediation has a lot of beauty in it for employment law cases. So again, listen next week at the same time, 7 to 8 on Talk Radio, 790 KABC, Karl Gerber, workplace lawyer. And please call my office for a confidential conversation. You can go to worklawyerca.com. You can look at a page we're putting up for this radio show, workplacelawyer.org. You can listen to some of the old shows. So thank you for listening, and please call in next week to the station too. 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. So you can go on air and we can talk about an employment case, because I like to interact with employees, and that's why I'm Karl Gerber, workplace lawyer. Thank you for listening, everyone. It's been a great show with a very esteemed mediator and a lady who has got her name now in the law books from a pregnancy discrimination case she had.
This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyer Group. 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 Karl Gerber